My name is Krista Daring. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I am the Executive Director of SWOP USA. I am a street medic and first responder for over the past 15 years, and I'm also a folk herbalist. I'm sure that you've heard a lot about shortages of PPE, which is personal protective equipment, and so I wanted to reach out to our network to talk a little bit about some of the harm reduction measures that you can take if you are short on masks, and ways to keep yourself safe. These are just my personal experiences. This should not be taken as medical advice. I've tried my best to pull from various studies that are coming out of universities and the CDC right now on some of the best practices, but this is largely coming from what I've found to work for me in doing outreach to sex workers who are impacted by COVID right now. As members of SWOP, we hold ourselves to a higher standard than a lot of other service providers in terms of cultural competency and the way that we treat those that we're interacting with on outreach, our participants, our clients, however you generally interact with folks. It's really important that we are aware of the unique struggles that sex workers are facing, and that not everyone in the sex industry has had the same experiences with medical professionals or service providers, and to always be really responsive to that. As sex workers, we're frequently stigmatized and considered or treated primarily as vectors of disease, and that is highly, highly focused and disproportionately brought down on our siblings who are working in the street economy. It's very important for us to take precautions to keep ourselves safe and to also keep our participants safe, but we want to make sure that we're not replicating the harm that comes from the stigma of being treated as a vector of disease. If you do not feel like you can do street outreach or other forms of outreach safely without potentially inflicting that stigma of fear or disease onto your participants, then I would suggest doing a real self-evaluation of if that's the best use of your particular skills in this moment. Being able to look at yourself and the things that you're bringing to outreach and say, maybe this isn't the best fit for me, there could be some other way for me to use my strengths. That's an asset and not a deficit. It's really important in this moment and throughout all of our work that we be real about what our own capacities are, especially if we are in a position where we might actually replicate harm. One of the key underlying features to outreach with SWOP is to do no harm, and that can look at a lot of different ways. And for those of us who are coming from a very different cultural context or experiential context of those that are working in the street economy, we need to be hyper aware of that and hold ourselves to a really high standard around it. So, I'm going to talk about a couple safety procedures today. I'm going to focus primarily on masks and gloves. So this is primarily geared towards us thinking about not potentially infecting those that we're encountering on outreach. I'm someone that has no particular underlying health conditions that might make complications of COVID much more pronounced, except that I am a smoker, I don't get a lot of sleep. So those are real things for me to think about, but I want to be most concerned about if I'm sick and I'm asymptomatic, so I'm not showing any signs of being sick, and potentially passing that on to somebody who might be in a much worse position if they were to get ill. When you're putting together your outreach supplies, so condoms, lube, hand sanitizer, food, when you're getting ready to get cash together to do cash drops, anything like that, you want to be practicing the same procedures that you would when you're actually out on the street, because again, we're really focused on not potentially infecting people who are having less access to healthcare or medical racism, anything like that. So you want to make sure that you're sterilizing all the surfaces that you're going to be preparing on. You want to be wearing masks and gloves, and generally trying to minimize as much potential risk for the virus, in particular in this situation, COVID-19, from getting onto any of the supplies that you're going to be handing out. There's a lot of different information about how long the virus can live on different surfaces. Anything that's permeable, paper, fabric, things like that are really hard to sort of spot sterilize with like a spray of rubbing alcohol or bleach. So we want to be very, very mindful of not potentially infecting anyone. So I'm going to show you how to put on your gear, because there's a lot of sort of orders of operations here around how to think about what you're touching, and how that could be transmitted to something else. Right now, I just have latex gloves. I have some non-latex gloves that I would use when I'm actually out doing outreach, because I don't have a latex allergy, but other people might. So, technically these are non-sterile, they're non-surgical gloves, but I've just opened this package. I'm not reusing gloves. Gloves are absolutely not reusable. With the suggestions that we're seeing out of people wearing gloves and face masks, you'll see people just wearing the same set of gloves all day, and that's not actually a great mode of protection, because every time you touch something with your gloves on, you're potentially spreading it. Or picking something up, and then if you're touching your face, you're touching other people. You could actually be moving that around from person to person. So gloves, you really want to throw them away after every single use. I will show you a picture of the passenger seat of my car right now with a whole bunch of gloves in it. So once you have your gloves on that haven't touched anything else, you can go ahead and put on your mask. This is a mask that is pretty much the end of its life for me. I'm going to get a little bit into my personal practices around harm reduction with masks, but I'm going to show you a little bit about like what possible viral transmission looks like. So this one's going to go in the trash after this. So without actually touching my face, I'm just going to put these over my ears, trying not to touch my hair. I generally shower before and after outreach, just in hopes of getting anything off my skin that could otherwise be transmitted to somebody. You don't want to be touching your mask once it's on. I know that's really frustrating, especially ones that are less breathable. As a smoker, I find it very irritating, but every time you're touching your mask, you have another opportunity to get any sort of, bacteria or virus on it. So I'm just going to demonstrate with a little bit of glitter glue here that's out of sight, but say, I have touched something that's infected. That's now on the gloves. If I'm adjusting this, that's going to go on there. And of course, with a virus or bacteria, I can't actually see that, but this is just sort of a little visual demonstration. And so every time that I have, a potential infectious material on my gloves and I'm touching my face, now it's going to be there. If I'm taking this on and off, it's going to be moving around a lot. I see a lot of people walking around with their masks like this. Or just, over their mouth and not over their nose. Since we're primarily concerned about infecting other people, in this situation, if I had COVID-19 and some, liquid from my nose came down onto the mask, which could very easily in this situation, then it's on the outside of the mask and I'm even more likely to end up touching that, infecting someone else. So really best practice is once your mask is on, is to keep it on until you're done. I know that's not always easy, but to just be really thoughtful when you're taking it on and off, adjusting it, anything like that. What I usually do at this point, I feel kind of silly because I have glitter glue on my face and I don't know how easy it will be to get off. Just like a virus. So once you're ready to take your mask off, the way you take gloves off is you're gonna pinch the corner. As you can see, I'm gonna get a little bit more glitter glue in here to actually see how good this is. All right, so let's say that we have some COVID on us. We don't necessarily know that, but we wanna treat our gloves as if they do every time. And sometimes your gloves do get wet and they're a little hard to take off. In this case, they're gonna be kind of slippery. But you're gonna pinch at the corner, your thumb and forefinger, and then you're gonna roll the glove off so that it turns inside out. And then you're gonna bundle this into your other hand and then take this finger and come up underneath and roll that up. So there's a little bit of exposure you can see right here where I could potentially touch that. I wanna keep my hand on the outside of the glove as much as possible. I just keep gloves in my passenger seat and I throw them away every day, also with using clean gloves to throw those away, put them in their own bag and throw them in the trash. So once the glove is off, then I'm gonna use my handy dandy hand sanitizer or washing my hands for at least 20 seconds, which is the birthday song twice, roughly. And so then once I have that off, I'm gonna do this as if I was gonna keep this mask. I'm obviously not going to. But if you're going to, all of these masks are designed for single use. Unfortunately, many of us do not have the option of only using our masks once in this particular moment because there's such a shortage. And so what we're doing in Baltimore is we're prioritizing disposable masks to folks that we're encountering on outreach to make sure that we can keep other masks that might be more durable that we can reuse if they have to be washed and put through a dryer, because not everybody has access to a washer and dryer. So, assuming I was going to keep this disposable mask, I have a little bag with my name on it. Now that my hands are clean, I'm going to go ahead and do it again because I touched this bag. Just good practice. You know, your hands can't be too clean. I'm going to remove the mask from the back, again, not touching the front, and I'm going to put it in the bag. I know that a lot of us have to reuse masks right now, but if you can keep using your same mask, that's going to limit the amount of potential infection that other people can face. So if you want to keep this in your car, you know, outside on your porch, anything like that, just so that it can stay as your mask. So a lot of us, I think, are using fabric masks right now. That is a surgical mask. I also have an N95 mask with a filter on it, and then I have another N95 mask that doesn't have a filter on it. I'm sort of cycling through these and seeing what I like, and also what I think is the most effective depending on the situation. So again, this is not medical advice. I'm coming from my own experience. If you have a better method that works, I certainly would love to hear about that in the network. We need to share all this information together so that we can be as safe and as responsible to our participants as possible. So this is the mask that my mom made for us. Thanks, Mom. And so this is a fabric mask. You can add a filter into it. We've been using cut up vacuum cleaner bags, which I know we're starting to run out of, as people have seen these different designs on the internet. So with a fabric mask, the same sort of procedures that I mentioned earlier with the disposable mask are true. Like, you don't want to be touching it, you don't want to be adjusting it, you don't want to be taking it on and off. And with these, they need to be washed after every use. And so I put them in the washing machine on hot, and then in the dryer on hot. You know, you can if you have the ability to let them sit for a few days before reusing them, that also is a good thing. So, you know, figure out what works best for you. In terms of the disposable masks, so there's a lot of different rumors going on out in the world right now. Some people are suggesting spraying them down with bleach. Some people are suggesting hydrogen peroxide. I've read a fair amount about the risks of that, so I'm not recommending that. If you put bleach onto the masks, and especially if you're combining it with heat, that can create chlorine gas, which is, of course, incredibly, incredibly toxic to people and animals. Chlorine gas is universally toxic. Hydrogen peroxide can have sort of similar risks, and can cause a lot of upper respiratory issues, having trouble breathing. That could be mild to severe, also skin irritation. So I'm not suggesting doing those things. You know, you see these sort of bigger manufacturers that are able to do it, the aerosolized, I don't know exactly how to pronounce it, hydrogen peroxide treatments. I have not found a at-home version that seems safe, so I'm saying steer clear. What I do is, for the disposable masks, you know, I put them in the bag. When I'm ready to treat them, I put on a fresh set of gloves. I preheat my oven to 220 Fahrenheit, and then put them on a baking sheet and put them in there for 30 minutes. I have no way of measuring if this is having an impact on any potential viral count or bacterial count that are on the masks. This is just what I'm sort of doing as a harm reduction precaution, to make myself feel a little bit safer and to feel like I can keep using those masks. You may also see something online about using the convection feature on your oven. The only evidence that I've found that is a good idea in a residence is if you somehow can hook up a HEPA filter or some sort of filtration to the export of air from your oven. Otherwise, there's a risk of basically stirring up that virus and it coming back out into your house. So don't use convection unless you somehow can filter that with an actual, like, medical grade filter. And even that I haven't tried. It's just the best information that I can find. So the masks at 220 on bake. After that, I've not found that to degrade the masks in any way. I can't, of course, see it on the molecular level, but I'm hopeful that that is a good precaution. It should be hot enough. If the mask comes out and it is deformed in any way, it's not fitting around your nose or your mouth, that mask is done. At that point, it's not actually that helpful. It's not helpful for you. It's not helpful for anyone you're interacting with. So you're going to want to toss that one. So in terms of eye protection, there's a lot of conflicting evidence right now about how much of a risk getting the virus via eye contamination is. And this is a big part of this sort of idea of coming back to the idea of like sex workers being stigmatized, especially those that are already in really vulnerable situations. I'm not currently personally using eye protection when I go out and do outreach. I do keep it with me. I've had a few folks express that they have had COVID-19 symptoms or that they are concerned that they have it. I haven't done this yet, but what I potentially would do if I think that I really need to be in close proximity to that person is I do have a pair of goggles that I keep with me. If I was in any situation where I was going to use them, the way that I would do that is I would say to that person, like, thank you so much for sharing that information with me. If it's okay with you, I would like to wear my goggles for the rest of this conversation to keep us both safe, if that's okay with you. If that's not okay with them, or I see anything weird in their body language, I'm going to readdress how I want to approach that person, because I definitely don't want to put them in a situation where they feel like I am, you know, very, like, that I need to distance in a way that is damaging and violent towards them. So I keep it, you know, I usually have these in my car anyway, because I'm just kind of hypervigilant. I've not found use to use them yet, but if you feel really strongly that like you want to have that option, these are available in hardware stores. They're also pretty easy to clean with some rubbing alcohol afterwards. But again, first and foremost comes the safety, security, and the dignity of the folks that we're interacting with. So I just want to flag that, you know, as an issue. Finally, I just want to touch on self-care a little bit. There is plenty and numerous evidence long before COVID-19 that fear and stress and anxiety have incredibly detrimental effects on our immunity. Many of us do not have the ability to turn away from that stress, anxiety, and fear right now, but I just can't, I wanted to close this out by saying, you know, if you can take time to practice some self-compassion, to have a good meal, especially if you can, you know, get some dark leafy greens in there, drink water. Drinking water is really important in this moment because COVID-19, we believe at this point, can, you know, basically get into your mouth or into your nose, and if it is not washed down into your stomach, which will kill the virus, that can be one way of contracting it. So drinking lots of water, eating foods that make you feel good. Those don't have to be things that are like classified as healthy foods. Like really it's about, you know, protection of your spirit and your mind in these times. Yeah, and just taking time to recharge. If you can get sleep, please get sleep. I know many of us cannot right now, but one of the things that we talk a lot about as street medics is don't make another patient, and that patient is yourself. And so the most that we can do to keep ourselves together so we can go back out there and responsibly and effectively serve the communities that need us the most for the longest period of time is a lot of that self-care and community care. Reach out if you have any questions, and thank you so much for all of the incredible work that you are doing. I am just completely in awe of the work that sex workers are doing right now. Thanks.